Hey, what's up, blue collar business owner? Welcome back to the Blue Collar Prosperity Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Maska, where we focus on helping guide you to have a prosperous blue collar business. Today, we have with us Jon Torrey. Jon is the co-founder and director of marketing at SearchLight, a data and analytics company in the home services vertical. SearchLight first started as a digital marketing agency, but realized there were gaps with accurately tracking revenue generated by various marketing channels. The team and company fully pivoted into developing the software and have spent the last half decade building their solution from the ground up specifically for trade businesses. So that is Jon Torrey. Super excited for him to be here today. Welcome, Jon. Thank you so much for being here. What's going on today?
Yeah, Paul, no, thank you so much. So what's going on today is I'm doing a lot of month-end recap. So July data, I have consulting clients, which keeps me really close to the voice of the customer. So I'm getting a lot of, hey, what's happening in the industry? How is our business comparing? Are there any insights, any recommendations that you're seeing from our data that we should be taking action? So this time, usually around the beginning of a new month is a lot of data recap analysis and getting that actionable insight out to clients.
Awesome. So obviously there's more data than ever out there. Sometimes business owners don't know what to do with it or what's important, what's not important. So we're going to dive into all that. Before we do, kind of give our listeners an insight into how you got started. Obviously, you started this as a digital marketing agency, made the pivot. Why the pivot?
Yeah.
What took you to where you are today?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. The pivot started as us solving a problem for ourselves, which we knew very intimately. And I think that's one of the easier ways to find success in product management, because when you are that user, you have that firsthand feedback. So we originally launched SearchLight as a digital marketing agency focused on pay-per-click advertising and Facebook advertising. We had a really great technology platform that we were able to employ. We felt really good about the level of service that we could provide. We felt good about how well we could scale the different aspects of managing specifically PPC campaigns, because there's a lot of manual effort that can be done without the technology. So we felt really good about it. We got our first few clients in the home services space, specifically HVAC companies, and they liked our team. They liked the technology. They had had poor experiences in the past. We were over communicative. We were over deliver. This was our shot to just really make a name for ourselves and go down this path. And after we got our first few clients, one in particular came to us and said, look, this is hard for us because we really like you and we know you work hard and you're some of the best people that we've worked with, but we're just not seeing the revenue returns in our CRM to justify the spend on this channel. Either you're not doing a good job or pay-per-click advertising just doesn't work for this business at the budgets that we're trying to spend. I had a 10-year background in automotive, digital marketing. My first job out of college was at a startup doing social media marketing in 2011. This is when Web 2.0 was brand new. When we ran Facebook advertising for car dealerships, people gave us a hard time saying, oh, teenagers use that platform. There's no way that an advert on Facebook is going to sell a car at a dealership. And we actually proved, no, it actually did move that metal. And the pricing was astronomically cheap compared to today. So I had been through this experience over the years, Facebook and PBC and getting that pushback. But this time around, I decided to track every single lead all the way through to revenue. This was chats, this was forms, this was phone calls. I had multiple spreadsheets. I would have lead, estimate, and I would check the estimates every day to see if the status changed, sold jobs, closed jobs, calculate that revenue. And this was during the time of the COVID boom. So we were seeing ridiculous returns of 12 to 15 to 20x return on ad spend just from new customers, because that was the next layer. Hey, we don't care about existing, and we can touch on that. I still think existing is important for PPC, but we just care about new customers. So I was doing that, and the numbers were just blowing my mind. And I found a lot of gaps and holes and just incorrect logic with revenue attribution providers in the space. And we decided to then go build that. We got, an amazing CTO who spent his entire career building analytics, data platforms, data architecture, and we decided to build it from the ground up. Not that our contractors care about this, but we don't use traditional data warehousing. We use our own system that allows us to be at the price point that we're at. And we're a team of analysts, we're a team of consultants, we're a team that's been in the trenches with clients from the beginning. So that's how we ended up pivoting into this. And we found a really good product market fit by solving this problem for ourselves. Once we started to show this to contractors, and as the data maturity and the maturation of this industry started to really take off, this has become a really important aspect of managing a well-run home service business.
That is awesome. So we are kind of post-COVID now, 2024. We saw homeowners probably spend 5 years worth of money in a 2-year period, whether they're doing additions, doing pools, all the things. Hey, let's get that out of the way. Money's cheap, all those things. So now you probably hear it more than anybody is, I want more leads. There's just not as much leads. People aren't spending as much money. What are you seeing out there from a data standpoint, from a customer standpoint, from a market standpoint of, what's working, what's not working, and, where's the trend going into 2025?
Yeah, definitely. So this would be controversial, but I'll say it. Every business is going to be different. So there are absolutely businesses that need more leads. But most businesses that I work with do not need more leads. They don't necessarily need to increase their budget. They don't necessarily need to pivot their strategy completely. The number one thing that I am seeing right now, and this is probably a function of where the economy is and the types of customers that are coming through, where they're shopping around more. I'm seeing the demand, but I'm seeing a lot of it get stuck, quote unquote, in unsold estimates. Now, there's nuance to that. That could be stuck because these customers are just putting their toes in the water. So yes, in that case, we do have to go get more leads because we need people who are more serious. But a lot of the time, especially during the busy season, follow-up processes tend to scale back because you are getting the next lead, the next lead, the next lead. The customer base that you already have is one of the most important things that you can leverage for your business. And this comes from someone, again, we're an agency that used to manage PPC. We work with a lot of agencies, and that is still an important aspect of a strategy. But that is the one thing that you can rely on, I think, especially when demand is a bit up and down. I always look at AHRI data, and it's pretty clear that every 15 years, the demand cycles, the number of units shipped in the United States by equipment tends to mirror itself. So if you look 15 years ago, that number of units that were shipped is going to be pretty similar to now. Even if it's not the exact same number, maybe it went up, but just the curve of that graph, it's actually really neat and fascinating. AHRI data is free, by the way. So we're around that time period of the Great Recession, was about 15 years ago. I think this winter, we really felt it. We saw over 27% drops in, and I believe that's the correct stat, I have it in my Substack, in furnace units shipped in the month of, say, January. Again, I'm just trying to be anecdotal and remember this. So we are certainly in a downturn period where demand is reducing from these highs, this pent-up demand from COVID. 2025 is the wild card. I don't know if we are bottoming out, because last year was, compared to this year, is actually more of a bottom, or if we're going to be on that upswing. So that's why I'm just telling people, I can't predict that. Nobody can. We're either going to be in that upswing, or we're either going to be in the downswing, or we're going to stay the same, right? Those are the only three possibilities. So the best thing that you can do right now, I think, is really dial in lead management, in-home sales process, sales follow-up with the existing leads that you're getting. Anything additional from that is a gift, and that's amazing. But let's make sure we're dialed in. If next year conversion volumes, overall demand decreases 20%, that's kind of what we saw during the Great Recession, we have processes in place to activate our existing customers in our pipeline already.
Yeah, and I think that's so key and always overlooked, is we're always looking to go get more new, and you've got a database of thousands of people sitting in your service Titan or sitting in Jobber or sitting somewhere of like, hey, they if they need us, they'll call us, but they actually just forgot about it. Like, when you can re-engage them and start communicating with them, they're like, oh yeah, they do exist and I actually need something, which, I would argue on your side that, even though it's a kind of like plumbing, HVAC, and electrical allows people to call when things are broken, a lot of things stay broken for a long time until they get reminded enough of like, hey, by the way, that ceiling fan hasn't worked in 2 months, or that thing has been leaking for the last 3 months. And then you stay on top of them like, oh yeah, let's get that taken care of because we have the time now. So as far as data goes, obviously you have a lot of it. One of the big things you look at is customer acquisition cost, return on ad spend. Another thing you hit on is using PPC for existing customers. So let's kind of dive into that a little bit. You said, nobody really needs to go increase their budget. What kind of numbers are you seeing out there? And what's kind of, what's the gold standard that people should be shooting for?
Yeah, so that's a tough question to answer, is to provide a specific number. It's really about your business. So the way that I look at things, every market is going to be different. If you're in New York City versus even Raleigh, North Carolina, the numbers are going to look different. So let's take customer acquisition costs as an example. So for something like a pay-per-click, the two metrics that I really want to look at in that case, customer acquisition costs, but also my average ticket. Because if your customers are spending $6,000 on average with your business when they convert via PPC, and you're only spending $300 to acquire them, that is a case where you may want to look into increasing your budget, obviously if there's impression share available, because those are really good economics. And then the second layer of that is I'm going to look at my ROAS, return on ad spend of closed revenue. So that's going to be your closed revenue volume converted by PPC divided by the spend. If that's above a 6x and we're paying $300 to get a $6,000 ticket, I do want to spend more. And those are the types of conversations that we have with our clients or our agency partners, is leveraging multiple metrics together to really tease out that story and that causation and make good decisions for your business. Because a lot of marketers do want to reduce the customer acquisition cost. I'm here to say that I actually think you should try to increase it to the upper limit that makes sense for revenue volume, ROAS, and your average tickets. So for you as a marketer, you may not be doing your job if your customer acquisition cost is $284 from PPC, because we're leaving $50,000 of revenue volume on the table. And that's a weird dynamic that we have, because when you work with an agency, and we experienced this, we were charged with getting at least a 10x return on ad spend just from new customers via PPC. Now, to get double-digit returns on ad spend is really, really hard. The top 5 to 10% of HVAC businesses are going to get that, and it can change year over year. Just because you get it this year doesn't mean you get it next year. The client we were working with was in the Pacific Northwest. Unfortunately, there were a lot of wildfires, so there was a lot of the market that didn't have central ACs that started to install them. So they had a total addressable market increase plus COVID. So we were able to channel that additional demand, getting far beyond a 10x return on ad spend. But I know now we might not be able to replicate that. So we have to tweak the data to see if external demand is coming down and we aren't able to hit these ROAS numbers. That's okay. We want to hit a 5, 6x to stay profitable. Let's figure out how much more can we spend to absolutely capture every piece of demand in this market. Again, it's going to vary by business, which isn't people's favorite answer. I'd love to say, hey, if you're under a $500 customer acquisition cost on PPC, you're killing it. But if your average tickets, in some cases, we have companies, their average ticket is $15,000. So that's actually, you can spend a lot more and still be really profitable. So it's just that game of what's the minimum ROAS for my business to be profitable, to do the things that I want to do, in combination with what's the revenue volume that we're trying to drive? What revenue targets do we have? If we have an aggressive growth phase, because we know this is a downturn year or years, it's been less than the COVID era. I want to be aggressive to get as many customers now as I possibly can, knowing that 15 years from now, this is really forward thinking, 15 years from now, we're likely going to see another cycle. So maybe our ROAS is less than it has been in the past, but we've been able to add 200 new customers to our database so that when we have the next downturn, we have a plan to go market to now an additional 200 people. So that gives us a better, way future pipeline.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, is right, that lifetime value of the customer. How well are we serving them? Are they going to stick around? Are they going to spend with us 10, 5, 10, 15 years down the road? Because a lot of times business owners, they get that one-time sale and then they move on to the next one. And it's like, hey, let's focus on building this long-term relationship because we do want a customer for life. So one of the things, obviously, that is really important with the success of any company and what they can spend on ads is that average ticket. So you've hit on that multiple times. How do you handle kind of being the intermediary of, hey, we're spending this on ads, but sales aren't doing sales? That's got to be kind of frustrating because you might be getting great results, great, lead acquisition costs, whatever you want to call it. However, the sales team is just not performing. So how are you able to kind of balance both of those, and how are business owners able to balance those? Because it is the natural tendency to just go after the marketing company, like, you guys suck, we're not getting a return on this, but it might be actually how the technicians are selling. So what are some strategies that you use to kind of handle that, to get the business owners, working with their sales team to increase that average ticket?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's even trickier for us because oftentimes we're the intermediary between the agency and the contractor, because we don't run ads anymore. Like, we've taken that off. We have some legacy clients and we didn't want to leave in the dust, and that helps us to learn. But we've partnered with I think a few dozen now agencies in the space to provide this data to them, because usually when times get tougher during a slow season, they're getting fired or they're getting yelled at, and it's just miserable for everybody all around. So I'll get those emails, right? So we have separate consulting packages where we say, look, if you're serious about your data and you want to talk to someone, I've done over 1,000 calls on this. I've worked with multiple PE firms. I've worked with multiple large HVAC groups, agencies, etc. So they'll hire us and they'll spend the additional dollars to get our time to provide these insights. So I will get those emails like, hey, agency doesn't look like it's doing their job. What's happening? And that's a partner of ours. So number one, we try to be a good partner to everybody. We lead with empathy. So that sounds a little bit silly, but before we look at a number or a metric and say, oh, this is terrible performance, you should fire them, and go through the costly process of hiring somebody new, getting them up to speed on their business, ignoring the fact that it could be market factors or sales process factors, let's really dive into the data objectively. What are we seeing? Is it a specific channel that is underperforming? Is it we're just underperforming as a whole? What do weather patterns look like? But we have a set of metrics that looks at the booking rate of the active customers that you're working in the month, so unique leads and anybody that's booked an appointment. We look at the match rate, which is effectively a run rate. How many jobs did you run where you actually provided a dollar amount to the customer? Then we have a paying customer rate. So that's going to be the percentage of those active customers that you're working in the month that turn into sold and closed revenue. That is the number that we operate from when it comes in the territory of working with the sales team. So most companies on average are going to have a 25% paying customer rate from digital marketing channels. About 1 in 4 of your unique leads plus the customers who have a booked appointment in your selected time frame are going to turn into revenue for your business. The really good companies are getting 30, 35, 40%. So we aim to get 1% better each month. That's what we encourage. But we give the data that's necessary to the right teams. We don't necessarily silo it, but they don't need to know, okay, here's the customer acquisition cost, here's this. We need to know, how well are we converting when we get in the home? And there's tools out there. Voice is one of them. There's things that you can apply there. But really, SearchLight is we just want to shine a light on the data, which sounds really esoteric, but the bottom line is, when you give that to a sales manager and say, hey, we're winning 1 in 4 deals in the home, here's how much revenue of open estimates we have, what can we do about this? Now we have an actual number as a baseline that we can try to improve. It's just like weight loss. You step on the scale to get your initial weight, and then you weigh in either daily or weekly to check your progress. If you don't have that, how are you knowing what's working or what's not? So I can't be too prescriptive with a sales team and say, this is what you're doing wrong, because I'm not in the home with you, or you're not flipping enough jobs, or yada, yada, yada. But what SearchLight can provide is that baseline metric. You make a change. How did that metric change? how did it impact revenue? The fact, and for business owners, I've seen this so many times now, just by thinking about it and having a number completely changes the outcomes. Just that is the momentum or baseline effort that you need. Because again, how are you going to lose weight if you don't step in the scale once in a while to know if your strategies are working?
That is so true. So you've mentioned it a couple times, kind of having that follow-up process, right? When we're busy, we don't really follow up with anybody. We give them a quote. They don't say yes, it's on to the next one. We've got enough leads. We tell our technicians, don't worry, you're running 4 or 5 more calls today, get the next one, blah, blah, blah. But obviously, as things slow down, shoulder season, economy, election, whatever it is, whatever excuse we want to use, all of a sudden it'd be like, wow, it'd be nice to have that dollar amount that you had just mentioned. So when you're consulting with your clients, what do you see, like just super high level? They don't have to get into the nitty gritty, but like super high level, what's a decent follow-up process look like? Technician gave him the quote. Client said, I'm going to think about it. I got to talk to my wife. I'm going to get it 3 more quotes, whatever they say. What's just like a super simple follow-up process that they can use to start closing more of that, unsold revenue?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, there's a couple of different ways to do this, right? The big investment is you hire that inside salesperson, and their sole job, commission-based, is to follow up with these unsold estimates via email, phone calls, text message, all points of communication. That's probably the ideal, is you literally have a full-time or multiple full-time people following up on those. The other thing that people do, obviously Chirp is a partner of ours, and I publish that data in our Substack weekly, and the numbers just blow my mind. Obviously, we have an incentive to promote Chirp because we've got that partnership. I'll just be clear about that. But every single month, I just cannot believe how much revenue opportunity is being generated. Over $400,000 per business when we have a sample size of 140 locations. So that's going to be text message outbound campaigns, and there's some automations there. But at the core, your unsold estimates, your install unsold estimates, that's the list. Now you can access these customer lists within SearchLight. The way that I prioritize it for clients is I'll tell them, look, you spent the most money on your pay-per-click leads, and those are the people who tend to shop around more. So those are the ones that you probably want to offer the steeper discount to or be a little more aggressive in that follow-up, because they're comparing you probably more likely than someone who searched you via organic or like Google Business Profile. So there's that. Now, a lot of business owners roll their eyes at me when I say, what is your follow-up process? And their thought is, you've never run an HVAC business. I know you're running a software business, but this is different. What do you know about this? Well, we know a lot, because if we don't hit our numbers, we don't have a company, right? So I will ask them questions. What is your process today? Oftentimes it's our comfort advisors or our techs or whoever it is. Usually it's a sales role. They have a list of the customers where they've given estimates, and then they're responsible for emailing and calling and doing that follow-up. Then I'll ask the follow-up question. How do you track that? Well, I have a spreadsheet where I can see when the calls are made and the data's in the CRM, blah, blah, blah. Then I'll ask, okay, so if you have 5 comfort advisors who are managing this process, are they all creating one spreadsheet, or is it multiple spreadsheets? And then usually as you ask enough questions, they throw up their hands like, all right, I haven't looked at the spreadsheet in 2 months. I don't know what's happening. I just know that we're trying to get more leads to fill that. That's just what we're used to. That's what we're comfortable with. So there's no single process that is going to 100% bona fide work at your business. It depends on the culture. It depends on the level of accountability. It depends on staffing. So part of the onus is on you as a business owner to figure out what is going to work with you and your teams. Talk to them about that. But at the end of the day, it's just timely communication. It's the right message to the right customer at the right time. You don't want these estimates. Most people will tell me if an estimate sits for 2 weeks or more, we've lost it. So that's a starting point. We need to communicate pretty soon after we get into the home. We do the estimates. So we communicate our financing options. So we communicate our warranty options. Is all that clear? Dial in that process first. I know companies that have created a what to expect during our consultation appointment that outlines their entire process, and put it on YouTube and send it to those customers before you get in the home. Because if you know the customer is going to have 2 other companies in the home, you might as well invest in a really nice video that says, this is what we do differently. We want to make sure that you have the right expectations, especially as other people are coming in your home. Because as a homeowner, we don't even know what a heat load calculation is, or maybe some do. If you do, that's amazing. But your average homeowner doesn't know what to expect. I talked to my parents about this. So like, yeah, we got consultations for a replacement, but like, we don't live in this stuff every day. So we don't know what's a good standard or a bad standard, et cetera. So if you have a really good process and you document it and you educate your customer before your competitors get into the home, and if your competitor doesn't do a heat load calculation or doesn't go through warranties or doesn't go through financing or doesn't disclose X, Y, or Z, the customer might pick up on that. So that process starts early. But then really it's about segmenting your customer list. It's whether it's you're using SearchLight, you're using Chirp, you're using manual effort to do this outreach. It's just consistent communication to the right people at the right time. Follow up on those unsold estimates within a week. Do an email, do a text message, do a call. If they're on the fence, empower your salespeople. Say, hey, if you have a customer that's on the fence, you're empowered to give a $500 discount. Something like that. So again, I know it's not as prescriptive as everybody would like it to be, but at the end of the day, the foundation is right message, right customer, right time. Focus on those unsold estimate install. Those are your biggest tickets. Those are where people take a lot of time to think, get other quotes, look at competitors, get in their minds early with your process, your reputation through that video that I talked about. And then whether you use an external software or an internal team, make them accountable, give them incentive to do that. And I think that is going to be where a lot of contractors find this is easier than I thought, as long as we execute that in a consistent manner.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head at the end. Like, you got to do it consistently. You can't do it a week and, oh, it didn't work, we're going to scrap that. Follow-ups don't work. The key is to obviously have that process, have the accountability, have the tracking, and then do it long enough where then you can start to tweak it of, oh, this text message didn't hit, let's try a little bit different wording, or this, this phone script needs to be updated. Whatever it is, the key is to get started and then continue to improve. And I love the video idea because that does really set the expectation. I say it all the time in the trades. The most successful companies are the ones who say what they're going to do and then they go do it. And that's it. You told the customer exactly what's going to happen and then you did it. They're blown away. You said you're going to call the day before and you call the day before. They're like, oh my gosh, this company's amazing. When really it's super, super simple. So having that video to walk you through whether you have a 10-step process, 11-step process, 12-step process, whatever it is, walk the customer through. Hey, we're going to park in the street. Hey, we're going to wear shoe covers. Hey, we're going to do a safety check. All these things. And then you do it. The customer's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then to what Jonathan said, when your tech does miss something, because that's just human nature, they might forgot to mention the lifetime warranty or the 5-year parts warranty or whatever it might be. The customer now has that information like, hey, Jonathan, I know the video you sent said you got a 5-year warranty. Can you tell me more about that? Oh yeah, Miss So-and-so, I apologize, forgot to mention that. So it's really just setting yourself up for success to take advantage of all of those missed opportunities. So as we start to wind this down, John, I know we talked about a lot of different things to track. What I want to do now is we want our listeners to take immediate action so that way they can start getting that 1% better. I'm a big believer in that. And I know you guys mentioned that as well. So what is one thing that any listener out there, no matter what blue collar business, home service business they own, what can they do within the next 24 hours to start moving their business forward?
Yeah. So one thing, I think it's just, it set the tone with your teams, your employees, your partners, that we are an organization that's going to leverage data to assist in our decision-making. So I know that sounds not very tangible, but the way that I've experienced in the early years before the data maturation cycle that we've been through is I make decisions with my gut because I've been doing this for so long that I don't need your data. I don't need that. So I think the mindset shift of we want to begin incorporating, that's not to say that we're not going to use your intuition. that's not going to be a large part of how you guide and steer this business. Absolutely, that is going to be a critical element of what you're doing. But I think the easiest thing is to go to your team and say, okay, we're going to start to incorporate some more data, both to help our accountability, but also to incentivize, to motivate, to energize the teams. Because yes, like what I want to say is you should sign up with SearchLight and start tracking this data so you have the foundation to do those things, but that's going to take more than 24 hours. So if you just approach your teams and challenge them, what data can you leverage, right? We have a CRM, even if it's simple customer data. How do they communicate? What do they write in their email? What did they write in the form? What did they say over the phone that's unique to them? For example, when we just talked about, you took the words out of my mouth, where when you talk about a process, how you wear foot protectors, et cetera, even some companies like, hey, we're going to knock on the door and we're going to take 2 steps back so that you're not intimidated by us, right? We're going to announce ourselves, introduce ourselves. All of our team members wear uniforms. So that is something like I've had an experience where an HVAC company came to my apartment. They didn't have uniforms, and there they were. They kind of banged on the door, and they were pretty big guys. And I was like, okay, what's happening here? Like, I didn't know the appointment time, things like that. So maybe even a step further back to make it easier. Because I obviously like data. It serves me well because that's what SearchLight does. The thing you can do in the next 24 hours is really just put your customer at the center of everything that you do. If you're having a team meeting, leave it. I'm stealing this from Amazon. Leave a chair open, and that is your customer. The customer's in the room with you, and every single meeting that you're having, every single decision that you're making, the customer is there. Another example, like leave a physical printed out take behind when you do your consultations. Have your warranty program outlined in that. Have your financing outlined in that. Have some of your 5-star reviews in that. If that customer is sitting in that room with you in that empty chair as you're having these conversations, you look to that chair and say, well, what would the customer want? We're coming into their home. That's uncomfortable for anybody. So yeah, we really should outline these things. Or if we give them a $15,000 quote, that's a big purchase for them. We know that that's normal for us. People spend that with us every single day. But how can we help them through that process? Data becomes a big piece of it because we can see how that moves the needle. But I guess in a way, I'm correcting myself and keeping it simple. Just put the customer at the center of what you do. And I think that's going to pay dividends. Data is certainly going to aid in the process because you're going to have a little more tangibility in terms of we made this change. Did it work? Did it not work? Or how well did it work? But at the end of the day, I think literally in your team meeting tomorrow, because I know a lot of sales teams do their meetings, CSRs, etc., pull in an empty chair and say, that's our customer, and our customer is going to be joining us for all of these meetings. It sounds a little bit weird, but it really does get that mindset shift of they're in the room with us right now. As we talk about this, what is going to benefit Mr. or Mrs. Smith, right? So.
Love it. And it is so true, because many times in any of those meetings, any of our visions, any of that, we don't really think about the customer at all. It's like, what's the company going to do? What's the tech going to do? What's all this going to do? But when you slow it down, bring it back to, if we do what's best for the customer now and forever, bringing it to data, that lifetime value of that customer is exponentially higher, because not only are they going to spend more, they're going to spend longer, they're going to refer a lot more people, and then it feeds all into that data. So that is, I love the idea, leaving that empty chair open. Y'all start implementing that tomorrow. Jon Torrey, thanks again for coming on the show, sharing your journey, and providing a ton of actual advice and wisdom for all the blue collar business owners out there as we continue our journey to prosperity. Before we sign off, Jon, where can our listeners go to keep in touch with you and learn more about SearchLight?
Yeah, anybody who's listening, you are welcome to email me at jon@searchlightdigital.io. You can head to our website, searchlightdigital.io, to check out our solution, what we do. But I think the most valuable thing is to subscribe. It's completely free to the datadriventrades.substack.com. I publish weekly newsletters with benchmarks, trends, insights, breakdowns, and recommendations as if I were consulting the set of data and clients that are in that content. We have thousands of readers monthly, so a lot of these tidbits and takeaways and how to interpret the data, how to take action on it. What is a good customer acquisition cost for PPC? What is the paying customer rate for organic? That all lives in the Data Driven Trades Substack. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. I publish a lot of snippets and visuals there. But that should pretty much cover it. And again, jon@searchlightdigital.io. I'm always happy to take questions, have conversations, etc.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jon. Really appreciate your time coming to the show today and giving all of the great knowledge and experience you have.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.